Louie, thanks for making time for us. Louie and I had to wait probably almost at least 4 months for Louie to find time in his schedule to be able to join us. As you all maybe have seen, Louie is so deeply involved in filmmaking and storytelling, and it's his theme is consistently about the oceans and about the climate and our species. And it's his lifelong commitment and dream. And this is what his life is dedicated to. And it's extraordinary because Louis has been from starting as a photographer with National Geographic, and he has, I'll call it, both evolved and deepened his work from the photography side to then video side, and to be able to use technology in ways that tell stories to educate us and to enable us to be able to understand what's going on in the world and really reveal the truth. And as you'll hear, he's done so in ways which is rather extraordinary and very, very risky. He's been called the James Bond of the oceans and the water. And as you can see, he's as elegant and handsome and stylish as James Bond. And he's also as stealthy and sleuth as James Bond, as you'll learn about some of his activities that he has had. And he's like the Secret Service agent who's protecting the oceans and of all our species. Thank you, Louie, and welcome.
No, thank you. Thank you. Nice to be here.
Before we dive into some of your focus and your activities today, Louie, I'm curious. As a young boy, what was it that sparked that wave for you to have oceans and water be such an integral part of your life?
Oof, like a lot of people my age, they got inspired. I'm about I grew up in Iowa, about as far from the oceans as you could get.
Hmm.
Back when I lived in Colorado, I started the Oceanic Preservation Society from Colorado, and the joke was that we're conveniently located between two oceans. But it really was at the beginning, like a lot of people my age, inspired by Jacques Cousteau specials. And
Mm.
in my case, I guess you could probably say, and James Bond thrillers was kind of a combination of the two. And if you look at the Cove, I think the Rolling Stone magazine said the Cove is like a cross between Born Identity and Flipper. But
Mm.
the idea, is really how can you inspire people to create change? Most filmmakers are, it's about box office. How much money did it make? How popular is it? How many butts and seats is it? Our goal is really, once you have those people coming out of the theater, how do they act different? How have you changed their minds? There's different, it's actually a little bit of a nuance, but there's a difference between changing the way people think and changing the way that they act.
Mm.
That's what we try to do. It's not, the end goal is not the box of popcorn and the $10. It's how do you change people's minds so that they're thinking about the world differently? And it takes about 90 minutes to actually do that. And that's, scientists find that they're not even thinking about film. And that's, coincidentally, that's about the sweet spot for a documentary. Mostly because that's about how long people can stand to sit on their butt for and watch a documentary is about 90 minutes. But it's also, coincidentally, the amount of time it takes to change a brain, the way it thinks. Is neuroplasticity. Because we all start out the beginning of a film one way. My goal is to entertain, educate, excite, and then change the neurons in people's brains so that they come out of the film thinking about the world a little bit differently, and more importantly, acting differently.
Mm. That's beautiful. Well, that's why we are here, in one, being educated, and two, taking actions. How many people have seen the movie The Cove? Can you raise your hands?
Several times.
Okay, well, I invite everyone to please see this movie. And Louis, when he created this, I think, as you said, it was about action. But I would be surprised if you thought that when you actually created this, that you would achieve the results and the actions that you did from this. So could you talk about what was achieved and the actions that occurred that were so amazingly successful and changed culture in a way that is very difficult to do?
Yeah, I mean, the goal really was to make a difference. I remember the husband of one of our producers, he was a philosophy professor down in the university system here in California, and he kind of scoffed at me and said, "You mean, you think you're going to change the Japanese culture?" Well, for people who haven't seen the film is about dolphin hunting in Japan. At the time, they were killing about 23,000 dolphins and porpoises every year for human consumption. They were eating them. And this philosophy professor said, "You really think you're going to change the Japanese people?" And I said, "Yeah, I think a film is the most powerful weapon in the world for cultural change, way more powerful than a bomb, because you can create allies instead of enemies." And in the first year that the Cove was out, dolphin hunting dropped 60%. The last time I checked, it was down over 93%. That 23,000 number is now, I think, 1,610, so over 93%. The film, it's not just, telling people what's wrong with killing dolphins. The film was exciting. I think it's still it depends on what metric you use, but it's still like one of the most winning documentaries in film history. It was the first documentary to sweep all the film guilds. It won about 70 awards from Sundance to the Academy Award. It's a fun film to watch. It has some parts in the film that are difficult, but like most films, it's going to have an arc that's going to take you down, but hopefully we left people a little bit uplifted by the end of the film, realizing that there's something out there that's being done to our counterparts in the oceans. When we did that film, I actually started racing Extinction, our second film, first. It was a big film about the Anthropocene, the collapse of the oceans and the collapse of the ecosystems as we know it. It's called the Anthropocene, the sort of the sixth extinction on the planet. There's been 5 major ones. The last one, what they call the Cretaceous Tertiary event, with the one that killed the dinosaurs. We're headed towards one, scientists say, by the end of the century, where half of all species could disappear. And you look at what's going, and you think that sounds pretty crazy to think that's happening right now. But you look at something like the coral reefs. 25% of the species in the oceans live on coral reefs, and we've lost half those in just the last few decades. So you can see this decline. You get to be old enough, you start to see these trends. And I think the job of every science fiction writer, economist, filmmaker, and humanitarian that try to just think, like, how can I change things? You try to look at where you've been, where you are, and where you need to go. And I'm not just trying to capitalize on that. I'm trying to, like, how do you head off a catastrophe? And so all of our work is really focused in on that, and keeping in mind that when I know that the audience, the last thing they want to do after you've been working 10 hours a day and you're exhausted, and maybe the kids are finally put to bed, the last thing you want to do is put in a movie that's going to depress you. So our films I'm always thinking about, what's the audience going to feel? What's the audience going to, what's going to entertain them? And it's not that I'm pandering. It's just that I'm aware that storytelling is the way that you change the world. And it's got to be a good story. It can't be just information. That's where a lot of filmmakers, I think, in my genre, I won't say fail, but just aren't as effective, because they think there's a difference between being right, trying to give people information, and being effective. And sometimes those are 2 different pathways, to get to the same event. And we try to be effective, but through effective storytelling.
Yeah, and you are. It's extraordinary how effective the storytelling has been. And as you said, it's because you're not just like the normal storyteller or the documentarian. And I mean, I remember when you were in New York City and projected all those images of animals in I think it was Times Square, and
all over the city. We did it actually all over the world, but the big event that we did there is we projected endangered species on the Empire State Building. And now that's kind of, I want to say, it's been done several times, but we were the first. It took me 4 years to get permission to do that. And when we finally did it, I mean, people thought I was crazy. They said, "Oh."
And you were.
Well,
Straight crazy.
But
Yeah, well, I
that's
mean,
what it takes.
it is the crazy ones, right? You know, there's that famous,
Definitely.
Apple ad. You know, it's the crazy ones that change the world because they think they can. And the thing
Exactly.
is, it's true. I mean, you have to be a little bit nutty to think that you can do something like this and identify where, I don't know, spots where the other people don't quite see it. I mean, I do understand that people are really busy. You know, they're trying to put food on the table, it might be hurting them. There's a lot going on. And so we have to be so effective that we demand that through the word of mouth that people say, you got to see this film. And our films we've been really lucky in that all of our films have hit their marks, in the sense that they've been, they reached sometimes hundreds of millions of people. And then once you start to get, 10% of the population,
Mhm.
the world's population, seeing a film or knowing about something, then you have a chance to change the world. Then you get to that 30% number, then people are doing it just because other people are doing it. But the idea is to grab those 10% of the early adopters, the disruptors, get them moving towards it, and then population starts to change.
I love your quote, Louie, that when you have 10% of the population 100% committed to their cause, you achieve the outcome that you desire.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have different, slightly different models on it. Malcolm Gladwell, I think it's more like 17%. Various people, but there's a study that was done called The Science of Social Change, and it wasn't like 7% or 9%. It was 10%. It was not just because it's even number, just because that's the reality. And the guy who came up with this study, this is back when there's all those studies behind a firewall. I asked him to send me the study. He sent it to me. There's like 3 pages of math on there, and that was never my forte. And like a lot of algorithms. And I called him back and said, "Can you explain this to me in like layman's terms?" And he said, "Yeah, it's like if you're trying to make steam, you'll never be able to do it until you get water to a boiling point. So you can heat it up forever, but if you don't get to a boiling point, you won't get steam. But 10% of the world changing their mind is the recipe for changing the, and that's, once you get to that 10% number, it's like unstoppable. So I think that's where we're at on a lot of things. We're kind of at that hockey stick curve with electric cars. I'd say with food, we're getting there. There's a lot of trends that seem to be bad, but I think when you look back at it, they're trending upward. And that's kind of what we're all trying to do, I think, is trying to influence culture in a way, or at least what I should say, everybody. That's what I'm trying to do, is influence culture in a way that's positive, so that my life has a positive effect on just not humanity, but the world at large. I know this sounds very highfalutin, but I mean, how can you change the world if you don't start out the day thinking that that's what you want to do?
And we have to be optimistic about it. If we're all fatalistic, then we're never going to achieve that optimal state that we all wish. As Gandhi said, we wish to be the change in the world, and it takes us to do so. So in coming to the optimism, what do you learn from the animal kingdom, of how they are coping with the changes that are happening in the world and environmentally? And it's extraordinary, our resilience. Our species is incredibly resilient to all these changes that are occurring, and we adapt fantastically. And what does the animal kingdom show us as a species for us to be able to adapt to what is happening in the climactic world?
Well, I mean, really, my model for like what works or what keeps me optimistic is, first of all, the world is incredibly resilient. We're doing a film right now called The Last Place on Earth, which is this place in northwestern Sumatra, where it's the last wild place where tigers, orangutans, elephants, and what did I say, rhinos, elephants, orangutans, and I'm forgetting another species. But they're all in the wild together, and it's being decimated because of illegal palm oil plantations. And when you cut down those plantations, the illegal ones, it only takes a few years before you have orangutans hanging through trees. The world is incredibly resilient. The trick is to change the mind and the behavior of our species to allow nature to be able to do its own thing. And to that end, there's been a number of people that I've met in my life that are just incredible change makers. But back when I was about 17 or 18 years old, one of my heroes was Pete Seeger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A lot of people, unless you're a certain age, you're not going to know who he is. But he traveled around with Woody Guthrie. "This Land Is Your Land" was his famous song. Woody Guthrie inspired Bob Dylan, which started the folk music revival, which started, I'd say, the beginnings of rock.
Yes.
But back then, I went to the first annual Croton Point River revival. This is Pete Seeger was trying to clean up the Hudson River. This was like 45 years ago. And I thought, what, this crazy old fool, it's probably about the same age I am now. And he was, so, back then the Hudson River, it was just so polluted. People didn't swim in it. You didn't sail in it. You wouldn't, certainly catch fish and, out of it and eat it. But I thought, well, I just wanted to meet him because he was interesting. But now here it is 45 years later, and all that's come to pass where people are swimming in it now. They are fishing, they're boating. It's now, recreational haven where it wasn't before. It was just a polluted cesspool. And, back when I did a story for one of the last stories I did for National Geographic, was on the information revolution. That started in about 1993. And one of the people I wanted to meet was this guy, Jim Clark. Jim was kind of like the Elon Musk, Steve Jobs of my era. He started the first 3D graphics, which allows you to create 3D imagery and computers for the first time, allowed the path for gaming and
Netscape.
Yeah, Netscape. So the day he quit that, he started Netscape, the first commercial internet browser. Then he did WebMD. Later on, when I worked for Fortune magazine, they said, "Would you want to go photograph Jim Clark for the cover?" And I said, "Sure, I'd love to meet him," because I couldn't. He was too busy for me to photograph him for the Geographic story like 8 years before. And when I finally met him, he was starting his fourth company from scratch to be worth $1 billion or plus. It was Shutterfly, which is taking digital media and making it into analog prints. And he said, "Louie, would you teach me how to be a good photographer?" And I said, "Jim, I'll teach you how to be a great one if you teach me how to be a billionaire." But after about 10 years of hanging out with Jim, less than that, I was like, what makes him so different than everybody else? He started industries, not just companies, industries. And he's tenacious. He had a dream, and he's smart, but like he would claim that he's more tenacious than anything. And I thought, well, as a photographer, you're always an observer. And I thought, I don't want to be an observer anymore. I want to do something. I don't want to document the collapse of Western civilization and our ecosystem. I want to do something about it. And basically, Jim got me, and he didn't make me a billionaire, but he got me into a nonprofit. He's the guy who was the financing behind my organization, the Oceanic Preservation Society, got me started. And I mean, I got to say, I because I've worked for Fortune magazine, I hung around a lot of people with way too much money. At one time I'd photographed 7 of the world's top richest people. Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, name it. But I think in my mind of like what the success, what I thought a billionaire would feel like, because a lot of them are miserable people. I feel like he gave me the best gift in the world by allowing me to set me on a path to do this work, because making money or being successful is not, I think everybody probably knows in the call, it's not about money and big homes and all that. It's really about your happiness. And I couldn't be more joyful because of the path it puts me on, because the only thing that really gives you lasting happiness is when you're creating good in the world, when you're doing something outside of yourself. So whether he meant it or not to free me in a nonprofit, it certainly made me feel like the richest person in the world.
Well, you're rich beyond the money. You're rich in your heart and in the service that you provide to others. And that's so noble and so beautiful. Let's come back to your pursuit of action and how that came about. And let's have some fun with the sexy James Bond role that you've got, where you've risked your life pursuing and exploring truth and behind the scenes revealing what is happening in the world that people have heard a little bit about, but they never really saw. And you documented and showed what is happening behind the scenes, particularly relating to the animal endangered species trade area, of course, as well as what you did with the dolphin hunts that occurred, and you had infrared military grade lighting that you used. And so could you share about that and some story with you when you went behind the scenes and what that was like? And you had to be incredibly fearful of the risks you were taking. Share more about that, please.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, like I said, I started doing Racing Extinction, our second movie, first. The Cove was the dolphin hunting in Japan was just going to be like maybe a small piece of that story. And I went to Japan, and I spent I just wanted to find out, like, to me it was amazing that any culture could eat a dolphin, because they're so highly revered in much of the rest of the world. I mean, the antithesis of it is killing them to eat them, the sentient, intelligent animal. Why? That's all I wanted to know. I didn't want to see what was going on at the Cove. I just wanted to have somebody speak to it so I could understand it. So when I went to this little town in southern Japan, I went to Taiji, and I spent about 7 hours in talks with the fishing union, or the fishermen's union, the union that killed the dolphins. And I spent 5 hours the next day with the city council, and they said, we're not going to let you do it. We're not going to let you, we're not going to have anybody talk to you about it. And I thought, there must be something. They must have thought there's something going on at the Cove that's so egregious that they got really scared. And I remember going to the Cove is surrounded by cliffs. There's like a tunnel the fishermen use to get to this secret cove. They have barbed wire, dogs, electronic sensors. I remember going up into one of these parks where the townspeople go to escape a tsunami, and looking down at at the cove that you couldn't quite see into. And I thought, I want to see what's in there. And I started thinking, my mind started going, and well, that would be exciting, and if we could figure out a way to do it. And I remembered like a switch going on, like an electric jolt going through to me, and said, that would be interesting. That would be exciting. And I started thinking of all the ways that we could probably, use some of the tech that was been coming out. We had one of the first gasoline-powered drones.
Wow.
And, the first hard drive cameras that were ever made. Back then, it was all about tape. And so we used the first Sony cameras that came out, they had hard drives. We put them in these fake rocks that were designed by Industrial Light Magic, George Lucas's organization. I had a friend who had mold maker there. We put these cameras in, and back then there wasn't even a way to edit using it. Digital was just so new, there wasn't any way to digitize it. We had to change the hard drives every night that we shot, and put them in like the air conditioning ducts at the hotel to hide them. We had runners go in every day to ship them back to America, so we wouldn't be caught with more than a day's worth of footage. And then we had to wait about a year and a half before software even came out, so you could actually edit to put it in a film. But we were, I just realized that that was the moment I started on this path to try to do something a little bit unconventional. And then I've started to recognize, like, when you feel that jolt of like, oh, this could be dangerous, this could be take me way out of my comfort zone. It's also a recipe for, like, if you're excited by it, chances are the audience is going to be excited by it. It's just the way it is. Like, this transitive property of association. If something's going to be, make you feel love or excitement or thrilling or new, it's going to probably be a little bit, difficult, or maybe in the case of the Cove, very difficult. But it's also important to realize, I think everybody that does kind of this frontline work realizes that it's not about me. It's not about my organization. It's about the bigger issue. So what's, for me, our crew spending time in jail in a foreign country, is that worth the risk to, you know, save 20,000 dolphins a year, 21,000 a year in our
Yes.
case, or like, you know, to bust, you know, illegal shark oil rings in China, which we did. Is that worth it? You know, so you're saving endangered species. And, you know, I think at all these nexuses, we think, well, is the mission is should be bigger than your own ambition. You know what I mean? And that's
Yeah.
kind of, so that you're not thinking about just the danger to yourself, but like, okay, is it worth the risk to create change? And in our case, you know, we keep on escalating. You know, once you realize that you can be successful at something, you know, then you think, well, how can we make this even bigger? Because things are happening very quickly, very rapidly, and you want to figure out what's the lever that you can press that can change things quickly. And that's what we're, you know, right now we're doing a film. I really haven't talked about it publicly very much, but it's about plastics and human health. You know, there's a huge problem in the oceans with plastic. Everybody knows that. You see the films on it. It's like, again, a lot of the films that are done, they just show the problem. And it's like, okay, I see, you know, 30 seconds of the, you know, of the garbage in the ocean. I've seen it. We've all seen it. It's horrible, but that's not the lever to show people that, because it keeps on going on. But now that we know there's enough science being out there, we know that this is the key part. It's not the plastics that are so harmful, it's the chemicals that are in plastics. It's the phthalates and the BPAs. It's the chemicals that basically make plastic soft or hard. Phthalates make it soft, BPA makes it hard. So if you have a tin, say you have a can of Coca-Cola or a Spindrift or whatever your favorite water is, or a beer can, it's all lined with BPA. Even though it's an aluminum can, it's lined with BPA. It's in the sun. It's sitting on a shelf for a month before you pick it up and drink it. It's leaching out of there. Now, those chemicals are endocrine disruptors, which is different than poison. You know, poison is 16th century toxicology, where the dose is the poison, right? You have a lot of it, you're going to get a lot of poison. A little bit, it's not, well, maybe it's not so bad. Endocrine disruptors are different because you only need a few molecules to change the way that your cells react to trip on cancer, to affect male fertility, sperm rates, female fertility, and your endocrine system governs intelligence, health, immunity, fertility, you name it, it's out there. And we're finding out, and there's paper after paper coming out almost weekly now to show that these endocrine disruptors are really powerful. The EU, for instance, they know this, and they banned 1,100 chemicals of personal care products. We've only done 11, you know, 2 orders of magnitude less in the United States. So we're making a film right now. Now, I'll tell you this, the results of this are pretty astounding. So we use this woman, Shauna Swan, who's one of the leading experts on fertility and endocrine disruption. And we go into the homes of 6 couples who are trying to get pregnant. They've been infertile for 2 years and sometimes 10. And we do a plastics intervention with them. We take out these phthalates are not just found in plastics. The phthalates that are used in, you know, sunscreen, lipstick, makeup. It's used for perfumes. Anything with a scent probably has a phthalate in it, which helps absorb it. Now, your body is the largest organ on your body, and so you start swathing the stuff on you, and it permeates. And so we did this intervention, took out the personal care products, went through the kitchen, replaced it with the good stuff. Now, the sperm rates of these men, most of them were infertile. A lot of people think it's the women, a lot of them men. And the sperm was like, I remember Shauna turning to me after we saw the rates. It was one guy, and she said, he probably shouldn't even been in the experiment. He doesn't have any hope. They got pregnant after 2 months. It takes about 70 to 90 days for a man to generate new sperm. He became fertile again, got his wife pregnant. I mean, I can't tell you, it's like, you know, how powerful this was. Some of the sperm rates doubled and tripled. Because, you know, we go in and we do a baseline survey, midpoint and an endpoint, and just see what the changes are. And all of them were dramatic. 2 of the couples out of the 6 got pregnant. It's astounding. And the same thing happens with cancer. My girlfriend does natural fashion. You know what? I met her about a year ago, and I told her I was doing this film, and she said, I knew she was fashion, but I didn't know what natural fashion was. And she looked at me, she said, you're wearing petrochemicals. That's a lycra shirt, and it's doused with petrochemicals.
Yes.
And so she told me on the first photo shoot she did for her company, she was a Victoria's Secret model back in the day. And then she's about my age, so she's like one of the first Victoria's Secret models. And then she was doing, when she became a fashion designer about 15 years ago. At her first fashion shoot, she was doing kind of these like a nude shoot with all women and wearing her clothes. And one of the women had a tattoo across her chest saying "fuck breast cancer."
Whoa.
And she said, "Well, what happened with you?" So, well, I had breast cancer. She had breast cancer too. 3 out of the 9 women had breast cancer. These are young women. It's like something's going on, and it could be the clothing. It's definitely, I'm 100% convinced that it's the phthalates or the BPAs that are coming into your system. So we think that's the lever with this film. That's going to get, that'll be the one that probably has the most impact of any film that we've done, because it affects everybody. It's with climate change, you can say that's happening over there. Are people going to stop driving SUVs because of polar bears or because of the oceans heating up? I don't know. But I think if we can, put a real dent, a serious dent on the petrochemicals use of plastics that are coming into us, and affecting our fertility, our intelligence, it's creating cancers. I think that's going to be the thing that starts to turn this around. To everybody that's on this call thinking, man, this guy's pretty crazy. They're thinking like I'm a little bit like Pete Seeger was. When I just want to tell this story just of hope. So
yes.
When I was doing Racing Extinction, I was doing it because I thought we need to get the world part of the thing. We need solutions, and electric cars were part of the solutions. They use about half the energy of a internal combustion engine. Now, for whatever you think of them, in that film, we took a Tesla Model S and made it into a Bond car. It was the first car in the world to have an electroluminescent paint job. You could change the color of the car with a flick of a button. We had out of the front, we had a forward-looking infrared camera, FLIR camera, so we could see the invisible world of greenhouse gases. And out of the back, we created a hatch out of the Model S, so we had an IMAX projector that came out of the back, so we could project those images onto skyscrapers or mountains or whatever we wanted. It was very powerful.
The Batmobile.
Yeah, more like a Bond car, yeah, I'd say. But anyway, we wanted to interview Elon for that in 2012, and this is in October, and he called and said, "Listen, can we change the interview till the end of this current quarter?" I said, "Sure, why?" I said, "Well, I could go bankrupt."
Wow.
So that 14 years ago, he could go bankrupt. Now Elon's the richest guy in the world. So it was pretty crazy back then. In Racing Extinction, I think he says it. I know he said it to me. He said, "It doesn't matter if we fail, just so we inspire other car companies to do the right thing." And that's happening right now.
Yes.
I mean, EVs up and down, but the trend is that way. The first story I did for National Geographic was on garbage and recycling. There's a cover story in April of 1983. At the time, there was only one mandatory recycling program in all of America. That was it. And I thought we need to do I wanted to do a story about, like, I called it urban ore. We're throwing away this stuff that has all this potential. Glass, aluminum, everything was just being dumped in the trash and mixed together. And that, because Geographic at that time had 11 million subscribers, 4 people saw each issue, 44 million people saw that issue. It started a water cooler for conversation about recycling. It helped jumpstart, a recycling movement, which we know isn't the total solution, to everything, but it's like, I could see that when you had that kind of a market share, 15% of the population, that's really powerful. Now you could use that power for selling ads or making money or whatever, but I could
change the world.
Yeah, why not? Really? Yes. It's like, and so that became very, that was the seed of going from Pete Seeger to working for Geographic, saying, okay, I could be one of those change makers. And then, filmmaking is just you use all the arts that you can. It's like the visual arts, the poetic arts, the words of storytelling, the music, all of it is working in concert when it's really working in the service of getting people to change the way that they act. And I say this and it sounds manipulative, but it's just storytelling. You tell a story for a reason, right?
Yes.
You're telling it to entertain, to make people laugh, to make people cry, and in our case, also to make people change.
Well, it's eliciting the emotion for people to feel, and to feel so deeply that it causes and compels them to take action. It's Louie, you and I are synchronous again, as we've been in so many ways in our life. We are hosting a podcast in August, I think on the 16th, that is all about plastic reduction. And we have experts that have been focused on this for their careers. We have investors that are investing in plant-based and biopolymer-based and seaweed in particular as a new form of plastic resin that will replace the fossil fuel resin that we've got, because it is a dire issue that every single person has plastics in their body. Every animal has, the air has it, our soil has it, our water has it. So we'll be sharing that with everybody probably next week about the specifics and details of that. I want to invite people to please either have some questions that you can put into the chat, or I'm going to open this up for everyone to open up their mics for people to have comments or to make questions. Yet before we do that, you've already started this opening of, I'll call it the inverse of Pandora's box, where solutions oriented, optimism. And I'd love for you to share, I'll call it 3 actions that we can take as individuals that can, one, keep us optimistic and hopeful about the future, our health and health of our planet and our species, that we can do and that we can take in our daily lives. And whether it's something you're doing that you can show as an example, or other ways that you feel, here's what people can take action with in their life right now.
Yeah, well, the most important thing that people can do to impact the planet is change what they eat. It's the most powerful thing that we can do for our personal health. We did a film, actually a series for Netflix. It just came out on January 1st. It's called "You Are What You Eat: A Twin Experiment." We took, people always said, I did a film called The Game Changers, which is about the virtues of a plant-based diet for its effect on super athletes. And a lot of people said, "Oh, I saw that film, but I changed my diet, but I fell off, a bit for a while." And I'd say, "Why?" I'd say, "Well, I have type O blood, or I'm Asian and I need fish, or I'm Northern European and I need milk, or whatever." And I thought, well, what's the truth? So we took 21 sets of biological twins, identical twins, and we gave one of them a whole foods plant-based diet for 8 weeks, another one a healthy omnivore diet, an animal-based diet, for 8 weeks. Now, we did this with Stanford University, with Stanford Medical Research, and they came up with this test. We measured everything that we thought was biologically significant. All cholesterol, heart. I want to do telomeres. Telomeres are the end caps of your DNA that measure essentially how long you live. Your telomeres are the end caps of your DNA, so when they get shorter, it stops replicating faithfully, and you get gray hair and wrinkles, and you start to your body starts to decay. Longer telomeres, longer life; shorter telomeres, shorter life. And the researchers said, well, save your money on the telomeres. You won't be able to see a change in just 8 weeks, so it would take a lot longer than that. And I said, do you know that? No, but we just know that it would. I said, well, let's test them. We measured everything that we could. Again, we did baseline, midpoint, and endpoint. And what we found out, the most remarkable stuff is that we found out that the vegan twins weren't biologically twins anymore internally. Their telomeres got longer. All their telomeres got longer. The visceral fat is the fat around your organs, not your belly fat, but the internal fat around your organs, basically started to just evaporate, to melt off. And and we know that, you know, in the blue zones, places where people live the longest without chronic disease, they're about 95% of their calories comes from a whole foods plant-based diet. So to answer your question, if you know, the most important thing you could do is just adopt more of a whole foods plant-based diet. It's healthier for you, healthier for the planet. And we eat billions and billions and billions of animals. And if anybody on this call has ever been to a CAFO, a concentrated animal feeding operation, where about 99% of the animals that we eat, chickens, pigs, you know, where they're basically incarcerated into this life, this unforgivable predicament that we put them in, because we think we need this kind of diet, when it's almost, it would be criminal. If you were raising dogs and cats like that, you would be put in jail. But anyway, so eating more towards the vegetarian or vegan spectrum is probably the best thing you could do for the planet. It's the biggest, animal production is the biggest source of greenhouse gases for food, the biggest source of freshwater pollution, the biggest cause of suffering. It's, you know, the list goes on. You can change that. I would say, you know, reducing or trying to remove everything that you can that has phthalates and BPA in your household. Don't drink out of glass wherever you possibly can. Get rid of those plastics, because I know that they're affecting your internal health. Those are two things. That would, you know, third, I don't know. It's just like, God, everybody has something that they know that they should do more of. Do that.
Well, I think that comes back to water. And everyone's told drink more water. Well, it's not about more water. It's about the quality of water and the purity of water, because water is the element that's in all of our food. Everything is grown with water. It's produced, cooked with the water. And so fundamentally, we need to take our water, which nature cleanses for us. And unfortunately, all of our water has been defiled and has got the phthalates and the PFAS and the glyphosate in it. And we need to purify our water. And then once we purify it, we need to bring it back to what nature does, which is making it energetic and essentially alive. And so to me, that's I'll call it the third, if not the first, is to be able to understand what's in your water and then to purify it and then revitalize it, which we do, and we actively have companies that support that. So everybody, I think, on this call knows my passion about water and what we can do, and it's something everyone can do. It's affordable, and it is the core, because as you said, like wearing clothes, we're eating our food and we're drinking whatever water and beverage all day long, and it's all coming back to the water. So I want to open this up to our community to have you either have some comments or ask some questions of Louie and engage you in our conversation. So if anyone has something specific, please either raise your hand or speak up. And I know one person that's here that I'd love to comment is Michael Stoker. Michael, if you're there, I'd love for you to just either have some comments or share about you and the work that you do in the oceans with protecting species.
Wow, I'm honored. Thank you so much. Ocean conservation research, we're looking at the acoustical impacts of the industrialization of the ocean. So the ocean noise pollution is really what our stick is. And, you know, the ocean is an acoustic environment. And I have a question, Lou. I met you in DC, I think, an event there, ocean event, of course. And you at the time were talking about working on a movie called The Singing Planet or something to that effect. Where's that?
We just got the financing to start that about a month ago. Yeah,
Oh.
we're basically, well, that actually I'd say that became Singing Planet became Racing Extinction, but we're actually doing a film right now about basically AI deciphering the language of whales. And so in that we're you know, we'll be, you know, looking at the music, the sounds of animal language and trying to interpret it. I think with AI, it's the people that work on it say that we're at the cusp of, you know, they said by 2030 we'll have the foundation models to understand almost all animals.
Hmm.
That's how fast this is happening. You know,
Yeah, my response to that is that, you know, like the witnessing thing, if we could understand what they were saying, we wouldn't know what they were talking about.
You might be right. You might be right. But listen, there's a lot of smarter people than me working on this issue, and I think that that's one of the keys to understanding, right? I mean, just last month, I think they came out. There was a study done where they figured out the alphabet for sperm whales, right, or the phonetics sounds of it. There's like, you know, we have 26 letters or whatever. They have like, you know, a couple thousand sounds that they use to communicate. But that's the first step, right? Is to figuring out what they're being said. And I think that's the key to probably the Rosetta. If scientists can come out with like a Rosetta Stone just to figure out the language of one species, I think that opens up the door for everything else.
Yeah.
When you talk about AI, I don't know how many people are aware of that. Most of these data centers use water for cooling to be able to keep the racks of all their, you know, signals that they're sending and the data analytics that's happening cool with water. And so the amount of water that's now being used in the industrial side of water has surpassed the municipal side of what we use water for our lives. And it's going to go meteorically higher and higher and higher. And companies like Google and Microsoft and Meta and AWS are having water as their number one priority for their business because they know that the cost is going to go up dramatically and the supply of it is becoming more dear and less available. So while AI has amazing solutions for us, it also is complicating our use of water and the needs for water significantly and dramatically. Ilana, I sense you probably have a question for Louie. You actually are neighbors with each other. Ilana's on a houseboat in Sausalito.
Oh, wow.
Hi, we've met because April and Glenn Buxbaum, when I was on their board, I think we were the first support in when you were doing Racing Extinction, which I have to say is my favorite, even though perhaps not as generally popular. So congratulations, it was amazing. I loved it. Got to see it at Lucas in San Francisco in the appropriate environment. Questions. Gosh, I think I just really appreciate what you said at the top of the hour. And in the face of some global leaders shifting, I would love to hear, I think you have a very accessible language when you describe something as simple as creating allies instead of enemies. And I would love to channel some of your words to our VP for this next campaign. And actually, I'm really interested in your words, so just everyone votes and becomes as educated as they can. So that is my question. If you had a political global place to invite people to vote, perhaps you could share some things and we can get them out into the earthlings here and see if we can vote with our values instead of something else.
Yeah, I mean, they're just voting for any candidate that's in favor of the environment, right? And that's going to probably narrow down the
candidates pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, you know, listen, I'm a pragmatist too. I think, you know, people do need to make money, but not at the expense of the environment. I think we have to be working concurrently of trying to find solutions that are, you know, regenerative and helpful to the environment instead of decimating. You know, you look at, you know, plastics, for instance, there's solutions out there. You know, plastics were made from plants, and we can go in, you know, in a way they still are, but it's you know, petrochemicals are like old plants, right? You can make it out of almost anything. So we need to, there's bio-benign solutions out there. You can make them out of bioreactors. There's a lot of ways to do it. We just need, you know, our goal with this next film is to create a whole bunch of constituents so companies have a market, and then to get, you know, ultimately the goal is to get policy change to have something that's a little bit more like the EU, instead of releasing these chemicals willy-nilly on the public and just running this vast chemical experiment toxicological experiment on a huge population is, let's figure out what they're doing to us first and then release these products out there.
Yes. Yes. And perhaps just a quick question. Are you aware of curricula that's been developed based upon your films?
Yeah.
So have you guys been profiled by Edutopia before, George Lucas's educational foundation?
No, we haven't, but it's funny.
Okay.
It's like I work at one George Lucas's property has a place like
Sure. Right nearby. Yeah. So I started Edutopia in 91, and if you haven't been profiled, we can get that going.
Yeah, please do, George. I actually pay my rent to George. Seriously.
I believe you.
I can't tell you where I work, but it's
No. I mean, I wasn't.
we have an NDA, but yeah, I pay George rent. I would love to.
Okay. Maybe Stuart can just exchange our text messages, and we can get you guys profiled as soon as possible.
I'll connect you up. Yeah, wonderful.
Stuart?
Yes, Robert.
Get to anybody that is raising their hand and so on, because I don't know how to raise my hand. But I have some comments.
Please.
I have a little different perspective than probably most of the people on here. And this has been something that I've learned over the last decade. And when we address the growing problems in our ecosystem and what actions are needed to correct it, it seems important to keep into perspective that during the last 3.8 billion years of geophysical and biological evolution, for those of you who don't know, the Earth is about 4.8 billion years old. Modern man and his failure to protect nature didn't even exist. Okay? Despite that, there were still unspeakable catastrophes. Extreme climate change, ocean levels rising and falling to the extreme, ice ages coming and going, extermination of most life species, disappearance of coral reefs, probably happened many, many times, and deadly pollution in many forms, often from volcanoes. So I do agree that a new challenge is due to the chemical and pharmaceutical pollution during the last 150 years of the Industrial Revolution or era. It presents a very new challenge, as our speaker pointed out, to every realm of nature and life. We now have, forever chemicals that can be like PFAS and so on, the so-called water repellent and non-stick chemicals that can be, it is determined that it can be detected in the blood of every living person on the planet. But unfortunately, we have to be very wary that politics and world control forces frequently use these environmental threats. It's going on to the extreme right now to their advantage in controlling us and our money. Okay? Yeah. And it's very easy to manage a population with this information that's beyond the scope of most people. So we have to be very diligent in keeping a historic perspective of environmental event and threats. Yeah, so Robert, I'm just delivering that kind of off-feature commentary.
Yeah, Rob, I agree with you. It's true. If you see our film Racing Extinction, we do talk about this. The different, the advent of blue-green algae created a lot of winners and losers. The thing that separates us from blue-green algae is that this next extinction event is created by humans that have a choice. Blue-green algae didn't have a choice. We do. Yeah. Everything that you're talking about, it happened, and it might happen again through some external forces, or it could be a comet that hits us in the next 10,000 years. And
sunspots, cosmic energy, yes.
Yeah, but the thing is, most of these anthropocentric insults that we have are caused by humans. And so let's do what we can to mitigate what the humans are doing, and nature will take care of itself.
Yes. Yeah, well, we've seen
Very, very wise.
yeah, as we've seen an example of that when we create ocean parks, that the sea life that has been decimated comes back and restores itself. And so when we let nature be and we take man out of it, she knows how to restore everything, and all life
Absolutely.
does come back. So I think it's critical, Louie and Robert, as you're both saying, is that we need to be responsible, and we need to recognize, regardless of who and why climate change is happening, it's happening. And we're contributing to it. And to whatever extent we can take action for us to minimize, so be it. That is our really responsibility, and our culpability as a species that is supposedly evolved. And it's time for us to become more wise, more sapient about life and all of nature that provides life for all of us to live.
Yes, I'm just pointing out that we can't allow governments to dictate how this needs to be accomplished. We have to take responsibility and control our government, okay? And that has been a great failing of mankind in modern history.
Yeah, that's a big one, Robert.
Yes.
Yeah, it all comes back to us. What can we do as an individual? And Louie has shared with us those specific actions. So is there any other question that somebody has as a burning question before we depart today?
I do. Yep. Eliza here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Hello. How are you, dear?
Great. Happy to have you.
Yeah, so this is all kind of the points that I would point to have been raised, that it is up to us. We need to reboot our behavior from the roots. And so I'm a filmmaker myself. I actually I was a landscaper and got pointed to filmmaking as through a dream that said, this is how I'd affect beneficial change on the planet. So what I'm seeing is missing is that I feel like we have all the solutions we need. I feel like we're reaching critical mass where people are understanding that we are at a crux point on the planet. I think this is the first time ever that we know of that humans have actually gained the ability to alter the quality of life for all life, all at once, all over the planet, in terms of us having our finger on a destruct button for the atmosphere itself and facing an inhospitable Earth, because climate catastrophe is the water system water cycle out of balance, that we as humans have pushed the water cycle out of balance. And so this narrative is not being addressed. You go to Climate Week and they're talking about carbon. You look all over, and really this is a key point that has to be addressed in the next 5 years. So how do we do this? And what I see is missing is coordinated, hyper collaborative action. So we talk about action, but how do we coordinate our actions in a way that allows us to be effective in the time frame that we have? So to me, that's the biggest question. And so my question for Louie is, as a influencer, how are you encouraging people into action? I mean, you give these, is there something more coordinated than just hoping that people will change from your films? Are you directing people to very specific groups, or and I would love to have a conversation with you after this call to really look at how we could begin coordinating everybody on this one call, because we're all doing amazing work. How can we unite our actions to really make an impact?
Yeah, there's a lot of people, what we're trying to do is just inspire massive groups of people. When we did we did this film on the Game Changers, which is about the virtues of a plant-based diet on performance for athletes. The first 30 days that film was on Netflix, searches for plant-based diet went up 350% worldwide. Merrill Lynch did a study about 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, that said that over 75% of the world's interest in a plant-based diet is because of that film. Racing Extinction led to laws that inspired or closed the last loopholes that were allowing endangered species to be trafficked in America. A lot of times we have educational campaigns, impact campaigns associated with the films. We'll have one with the plastics and human health film, but we're align ourselves with groups that are doing this frontline work. So my organization is really small. We have 5 to 3 people working full-time, 2 people part-time. That's it. And we created all this, this massive amount of good. But I don't want to have 300 people working for me. I want to go out and do the films and create these kind of, these huge jumper cables on these issues so we can change things.
Yeah. I'm not suggesting you do.
Yeah, but I think
Curious.
There's a lot of other, these films are used by other groups to motivate people, but we just don't have the bandwidth or the time or the money to do stuff like you're proposing. We do impact campaigns, but when we did, it's hard to, unless you're sitting from behind the scenes like I am, like that film that we had on Netflix, the series on Netflix on food. 50 million people saw that the first 28 days. That there was a Journal of American Medicine article that was generated by that. There are actually 3 of them. The first one just came out, and there's a company called Altmetrics that measures the engagement by the scientific community and the public at large to say, well, that study that you did, are people noticing? A high score is 20. I looked at our score last night. It was like over 2,300, 2 orders of magnitude more. And you have 100 million people seeing a film and changing their diet. We don't have, I wish we had the metrics to say, oh, this inspired this many people to change their diet, that there's, we could look at the healthcare costs that would go down because of this. We don't have those metrics. We're a documentary. We're a nonprofit film company, basically trying to, we don't have, I wish we had the, these campaigns.
We can help you with that. We have machine learning AI experts as part of our team that it's all about data and data collection. So let's definitely talk about that, Louie, so we can get some more metrics there. And then let's get Jim Clark and Elon and Bezos on your team and give you the funds so you can do more work and expand your team, and you can do your storytelling and get the message out there more and more, because you're one of the most effective ways of storytelling to share people to be able to take action in their lives. And so thank you so much for your passion and your commitment and what you do and how you do it and how successful you are and how you bring so much joy to that and optimism. It's amazing.
It's a team. It's a team effort, but as the executive director, I get a lot of the more accolades than I'm due, but it's really a team effort. But thank you. Appreciate it.
Indeed. David, you have something quick?
Yes, real quick. Stuart, thank you for putting this together. I got in a little late, unfortunately. Louie, I met you at the Telluride Film Festival when you premiered The Cove with Eric Jacobson. But anyway, when you get to your project on plastics, as Stuart knows, that is my background. I created the first plastic bottle made from PLA versus oil. And so I'm very much involved on the plastic side. So when you get ready to do something on plastics, please reach out to me via Stuart, and I'd certainly like to see what I can do to help you.
Great, let's connect after this.
Thanks.
Right.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
So thank you all for being here and joining us and taking action in your own lives. And so on that note, let's salute leaders and crazy people like Louie, who risk their lives and love doing it, and inspire us to take action in our own lives where we can make a difference. We do make a difference. Everyone has an impact, and it's up to us to be able to choose and be thoughtful and mindful about what we do, and that product that's on the shelf that's in a plastic packaging, to say, you know what, I'm not going to buy that, because that's not something that's aligned with me and my values, and is not good for my body, and it's not good for the planet. So we vote every single day with our dollars, and we can choose how we buy products. And when we stop buying them, the companies are going to stop making them because they're not selling. So I don't know if, Louie, if you have a thought about that on as an ending note.
No, I think you said it. It's just true. I mean, the most powerful thing that we can do is just change the way that we're acting. You know, just everything that comes into your life that you ingest, inhale, or absorb, think about the consequences of it. All right. Well, thanks everybody. Appreciate it. Pleasure speaking with you all.